It still officially is morning, so that's why I'm saying good morning because it's 11:59 here. 11:59. Yes, it is. 11:59. Oh, it's noon now. Welcome. Welcome to live office hours at noon my time. Noon. Welcome and hello. I've got a little bit of some dinging going on in the background here, as you may or may not have heard, can hear, but that's too bad. That is a thing that is happening. Little dinging. That's fine. As you may or may not have noticed, I am not in my usual spot, not in my office today. My office is back there. So if you're a regular viewer, you may recognize that window and that lamp light. It's really hard to do this. It's like weirdly not mirrored. And oh, Sarah, it was you. Thanks. It's fine. It's fine. And like that's the normal background back there. Yep, and there's my mic and everything. What do you know? And also my light thing. Oh my gosh. There it is. The light thing. Oh, Instagram, you might not be able to see that. Sorry. Depends on where my camera is. Sorry about that. But folks on Facebook will. So anyway, I'm sitting in my front room today because I can see my tree. Me and the cats, where me and my lazy coworkers, we're just here in the front room, just looking at my Christmas tree. So that's a thing. Good morning. Love it. Yes, it is the 17th of December, 2021. For anyone looking on in the future, this is what day it is here and now. And my name is Dr. Shannon Coates, and my pronouns are she, they. And I am coming to you live from north of Toronto in Canada. These are the traditional lands of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinabawake, the Mississauga, and the Wendake-Sioux peoples here up in north of Toronto. And I am a person who creates resources for independent voice teachers, mostly for independent voice teachers, so we can increase our teaching skills. And that's skills with a Z, of course. Of course it is. So, you may have noticed if you have seen me on the socials recently, or if I come into, oh, hey there, if you have granted me access to your inbox, that the Vocal Instrument 101 Live, no, the Vocal Instrument 101 online course is celebrating its third anniversary this month, and so it's 30% off. That's right, 30% off. And so that is available. And so what I have been doing on in the last little while is just talking a little bit about the Vocal Instrument 101. On Monday, if you want to check out that live, I talked about why I created the Vocal Instrument 101, who it's for, what you're gonna get out of it, and all that kind of stuff. And I've been asking some questions on the socials this week about undergraduate voice ped classes. As you likely know, I teach an undergraduate voice ped class and have for nearly a decade now. What? That's kind of crazy talk. And maybe even more than a decade now. It's been a while. It's just been a while. Let's just say that. And because of that, I have a deep and abiding love for the undergraduate voice ped class and for what we do, what we're able to do, and what we're able to provide in that class, and the kind of fundamentals we're able to provide. But I also recognize that there are some huge limitations. So one of the things that I asked on the socials recently was, what's one of the things that you remember from your undergraduate voice ped class? If you took one, and if you didn't take one, what's one of the things that you remember from your very first voice teacher and that you bring with you to this day? And there are lots of great memories and responses. And one of the singers posted something about Inhalare la voce, I think was anyway, it was an Italian sort of bel canto concept that we don't hear too often in our contemporary studios and in our mostly and in our independent studios. So that was a little bit of a surprise if that's the thing that you remember from your first teacher. Like your first teacher was using Inhalare la voce. I can't remember whether it was that one or not, but forgive me if I've got the wrong bel canto concept going there, but I think it was Inhalare la voce. So, some surprises where people are like, yeah, I got this thing out of, and I'm like, really? Your voice teacher must have been like, so like Italian at like bel canto, and for your first voice teacher, that's really something. Wow. And then lots of not surprising Oh, yes, exactly, Tracy. And lots of not surprising things, right? Where oh yeah, so some good responses here. Tracy is saying, I like that you took the class for granted because I was going to be the next Leone Price, right? Right? Weren't we all? Wish I had paid more attention, so I don't remember much from that undergraduate voice ped class. Right? I know. And I'll say things are changing a little bit. Like as I've been teaching this class, like I said, over the last decade or so, certainly more and more people are coming into this class very diligent and engaged with a very deep understanding that they may, and some of them already are teaching, but they will want this information, that this is good information for them to have. So I think there's been a little bit of a shift, away from, now that's totally anecdotal from just the voice ped class that I teach, right? But it feels like there's been a little bit of a shift toward, this is really important information and I'm really glad I'm getting it. And I'm going to try to pay as much attention as possible from like what I was as a young singer who, I just thought, I'm probably never going to want to do this. I'm never going to want to teach. And so I don't really need to pay that much. I mean, I did fine in the class. It wasn't that. And I found it very, very interesting and I love learning. So it wasn't that at all. It was just more like, I never thought that I was going to need to apply it. So, you pay attention in a different way if you're already teaching when you're in a voice ped class, or if you are like planning to teach, right? You pay attention in a different way than if you're like, I'm never going to use this because I'm going to the Met next year. And then the other comment here, undergrad voice ped is why I'm a voice teacher today. I love that. And I remember trying to read Vennard, yes, and being like, what? And that was another comment. Another comment about undergrad voice ped class is like some of the textbooks that we used back in the day. So my undergrad voice ped class, we used the Barbara Dosher textbook, which is a terrific textbook, and still so much relevance there today. But like, some classes use like Miller or Vennard, and those are really dense. Like they're really dense. That's a lot in both of those kinds of, in both of those texts, right? That's a lot. Especially if, it's your first time being introduced to the concept of, I don't know, thick folds, thin folds registration or something like if it's your first time really being introduced to that concept and to to how everything works together, having something like, needing to read through Vennard, that's a lot. That's a lot. We need to have it a little bit more, user friendly at the outset for most of our students. So those are some interesting things. Structure of singing was your undergrad. Yep, exactly. Lots of folks had structure of singing and still do have structure of singing as their undergrad voice ped text. In fact, that was a little bit of my doctoral research. A part of my thesis was I did now this is going back 15 years, however long ago that was. Let's try not to think about that. But part of my doctoral thesis was I did a survey of folks who were teaching undergraduate voice ped classes and which texts they were using. And the top 3 texts being used at that time, and again, this is going back at least 15 years now, at that time were Miller, McCoy, so Scott McCoy, so Miller's Structure of Singing, Scott McCoy's Your Voice and Inside View, and McKinney. Oh, what's it called? It has vocal faults in the title, which I hate. Way to make us feel bad about the way we sing, McKinney. Oh, diagnosis and correction of vocal faults, I think it's called. Yeah, right? Thanks a lot, buddy. So those were the top three textbooks being used as a primary textbook in undergraduate voice ped classes about 15 years ago, according to, the people who took the survey. Of course, there's lots of caveats in there, but diagnosis and correction, thank you, diagnosis and correction of vocal faults. Unbelievable, right? Like, what? So, yeah, I can't remember the text we used, but I still have it. I didn't get into Miller or even heard of him in Vidard until the last couple. See, well, there you go, right? So, lots of other folks. Oh, that was yours, yeah. And we used Barbara Doscher's text, which isn't in use quite as much anymore. But yeah, like those texts that's some heavy hitting, right? Like that's a lot. They're dense. Anyway, so that's one of the other things that happens too is we get these in our undergrad voice ped classes, we get these like incredibly dense texts where it can be so overwhelming. It can be so overwhelming, all of this information, especially when we don't necessarily have a direct, yeah, you have that book. Don says, I have that book and I feel the same way, right? Very overwhelming, especially when we're like 20 and we don't have we don't have a way to have the direct application of it. So that when I asked about what are some of the things that you wish you had had in your undergrad voice ped class, lots of folks talking about the like application. I wish we'd had the opportunity to have more examples, more opportunity to diagnose, more application, being able to teach, and have that direct application. Lots of folks wishing that they had. Let me just check my notes here. Lots of folks wishing. Wishing that there was more information about different styles, which was really one of the things that I wish that I had been better prepared for in my undergrad voice ped class. And I had a terrific teacher and it was a terrific class. Do not get me wrong. I wish that there had been more about other styles. So non-classical styles, which is what we called them back in the day. I wish that we had had more information about child voice, about changing and expanding voice, about working with the aging voice. Like I had no idea when I you know one of the things I've said this before about our voice ped profs is that often many of them don't actually have any experience teaching in an independent studio, right? So or in a traditional independent studio, right? So then when they're in there teaching us undergrads, they're telling us about how to teach the students that they know how to teach and that they teach, which is like 18 to 24-year-olds who are singing Western classical styles, right? So we don't often in our undergrad voice ped classes, we miss the information about, how to teach 8-year-olds which is a lot of who we, if we want to, is a lot of who we end up teaching. And like no one prepared me for the fact that I was going to be teaching 1,001 adult avocational singers. No one prepared me for that fact. I was not prepared to teach the thousands and thousands of like 50 and up, lots of retired folks, lots of folks who've been singing in choirs their whole lives, lots of folks who their kids are off to school and so now they have the time to do what they want to do and they've always wanted to take voice lessons. And so here I am like, well, at the time when I started teaching, I was actually a little bit older, but here I am at like 29 years old, 30 years old, and I'm like, hi there, you've been singing longer than I've been alive. How, what? So no one prepared me for that. And honestly, some of my absolute favorite students, right, are adult avocational singers, like, oh my gosh, some of my absolute favorite students to teach and work with. So like, no one prepared me for that. No one prepared me for aging voice. Not in my undergrad voice. No one prepared me for that. I don't know what was happening. I'm like 30 years old. My voice is in the prime. And I'm like, what is happening with your voice right now? I don't know. No one prepared me to teach very young children. No one prepared me to teach in other styles. No one prepared me to teach music theater. I didn't know what to do in music theater. Ugh, anyway, so that's fine. And also keep in mind, I took my undergrad voice ped class was like a long time ago. How old am I? It was like 25 years ago. Dang nabbit. It was a long time ago, right? So where do we go to get this information exactly, Tracy? This is kind of where I'm going here. So part of the reason that I had the vocal instrument 101 is because the information about specifically about how the voice works. So the functional information, yeah, Valerie, great question as well. I'll get to that one too. So the functional information about how the voice works, that information is in the Vocal Instrument 101, and part of the reason I created it, and how it works for all styles, right? That's part of the reason I created it, was because the textbooks like Barbara Dosher, Miller, Vennard, like I'm reading those textbooks, and even McCoy, I'm reading those textbooks, and those textbooks are very much from a Western classical viewpoint, right? So like, here's how the instrument works, here's how you should breathe, here's how you should blend registers, here's how you should do all of these things, but it's all toward a Western classical tonal outcome, right? So there's all this, like, it's very much skewed this way. So the functionality of the voice is described very much within a Western classical tonal outcome as the outcome. Yes, Western classical sound as the tonal outcome and as the goal. So that doesn't apply to like children. It doesn't apply to music theater. It doesn't apply to 99% of the music that's out there, right? The way of using our voice that's out there. So that information is in the Vocal Instrument 101. Not necessarily young voice and aging voice. That's not in there, but what is in there is functional. What is happening in the voice, and here's how it works to create this tonal outcome, to create this tonal outcome, to create this tonal outcome, and in these specific pitch ranges, right? Here's what the options are. So that's what is in the Vocal Instrument 101. That's part of the reason I created it, to have this style agnostic. Is that a way to put it? I don't know. But to have a resource out there that really does address the fundamentals of how the vocal instrument works, how this all comes together, and then how it works not just when we're trying to get a Western classical tonal outcome, but in all the tonal outcomes. So that's what that's about. And then I want to just say, yes, style agnostic. I think that's I think that's accurate anyway, right? I think it's true. And then that's part of the reason I created the Vocal Instrument 101. And then part of the reason that I have been doing pop-ups this whole past year, and I'm going to do a few more next year as well, but part of the reason that I've been doing pop-ups on specific topics like adolescent and expanding voice. I didn't do an aging voice pop-up this year. I think I did last year, but maybe I'll throw one in next year. But aging voice on contemporary versus classical, on contemporary classical, on testosterone influenced voices, on child voice. I did one on formants this past year as well. What else did I do? Oh, neurodivergent voice. Yeah, no one prepared me to teach neurodivergent kids. No one taught me really how to teach, right? So part of the reason I was doing all of those pop-ups was to have that, to be able to address those really specific kind of voice things. Now, those things are being included more regularly in voice ped classes. Certainly, they are included in my class. I know that, so those things are being included in more contemporary voice classes for sure. But that's part of the reason that I created those pop-ups. And then part of the reason that I am in 2022 that I'm launching the VoicePed UnDegree is for exactly this reason, to be able to have access to information that is relevant to what we're doing in the independent voice studio, and that we may or may not be able to get in our VoicePed classes, as well as the information, but also the application, right? So like, here's my main issue with what we do in voice ped classes and in academia. I mean, there's a whole committee right now, a whole group of fabulous voice teachers who are working together and have been for years now to create a sort of recommended best practices syllabus, not syllabus, but sort of best practices for undergraduate voice ped classes and graduate classes as well, but really focusing primarily on undergraduate voice ped classes and what materials should be included, how we should be, what subjects and all that kind of thing. All kind of, like I said, there's like a focus group working on that. And I've been part of that a couple of times. I've been part of that process as well, not as in depth as I would like to be, but still been part of that process. And in fact, they released a white paper in the Journal of Singing 2 or 3 issues ago, can't remember, but you can take a look at that if you're interested in undergraduate voice ped. And so that's fantastic, and I love the idea of having something that is a best practices or a guide, if you will, toward creating the best kind of undergrad voice ped experience we can possibly have. I love that. And at the same time, there are huge limitations, right? I think there are some really big issues with academia, and this is coming from someone who has 3 degrees, so take it with a grain of salt, or take it like I know what I'm talking about, right? Because I've been through the system, one or the other, however you want to put that. But one of my huge issues with academia is that the ivory tower is pretty locked, right? It is pretty hard to get into. It's not an easy thing to get to, right? So like, if you've been teaching, if you're 20 years into your teaching career, are you going to stop your teaching career to go back to school and get a master's in voice ped? No, that's crazy. Why? No. And is it then going to give you the information that you actually need for your independent voice studio? Well, it really depends on which program you go to and whether you can actually get in or not, because most of the time you have to audition with Western classical. You have to do a Western classical audition. So like, you've been teaching for 20 years and perhaps you haven't been singing that whole time, and perhaps you didn't ever study Western classical anyway. So now you have to prepare a Western classical audition to get into school. Yeah. So there's a whole, it's a lock. It's a very small door to get into the ivory tower, right? Not a lot of people have the opportunity or the necessity, frankly, or the desire, right? There are a lot of things that we don't teach well in academia. One of them is application. We don't teach it well in academia. We just don't, because the system is not set up that way. The system is set up for top-down learning. That's the way academia works, top-down learning, right? So now I am going to top-down teach you how to do student-led learning in the voice studio. Really? Is that really what's going to be communicated here? And I struggle with this all the time in my undergrad voice ped classes. Like, I struggle with this all the time. I am giving you all of this information. I am top down, top down, top down, top down. And now I'm going to put you into a practicum where you teach for 8 lessons, and somehow hopefully you're going to translate that into student-led learning. Good luck. Away you go, right? Like, the system is not set up well for us in academia to teach student-led learning, right? It's just not set up that well. So, and that's fine. That is you're welcome. That is a flaw in the system. That is definitely a flaw in the system. And not something that we necessarily are good at telling people about either, right? Like, we recruit, and then we don't really say, hey, by the way, you're probably not going to get all the stuff you need in this. By the way. So that is that. So let me make sure that I'm not going too far off track here. Yeah, the process, we deliver top down, and not everyone learns well, right? In academia, it's just not set up for everyone. We don't all learn well in academia. It's just not a good system for everybody, and that's fine. But it's just not, right? So, and also, like I said, very small door for all the people, very small, that ivory tower. It's not a big tower, you know what I'm saying? So that's part of the reason that, or that is one of the big reasons that uh, oh, sorry. And the other thing is that we learn by doing. Teaching is not a learn by learning skill. It's a learn by doing skill, right? We learn by doing. So there are lots of undergrad voice ped programs and lots of graduate programs now, frankly, where you are doing lots of teaching. And in the undergrad voice ped class that I teach, the students do an 8-week teaching practicum where they are teaching, and they have they have teaching mentors from the graduate department in VoicePed, and so that is a terrific system. And but that's kind of the most we can do in our, again, the academy is academia. The institutions are structured such that you can't, the practicum part is really hard to actually execute, right? That's very challenging to execute. So we learn a flaw or a design feature, Valerie. So such a good question. Is it a flaw or is it a design feature? Absolutely. I'm not saying that it's either one, right? Really, I'm saying that it is what it is, right? So we need to recognize it. And also we need to recognize, as folks who I've said this a million times, not having a degree is not a barrier to being an excellent voice teacher or to being an effective voice teacher. And sometimes having a degree is actually a barrier to being an effective, especially independent voice teacher, right? Sometimes having a degree can be, but you have to actually get over some of the stuff you learned in your degree, especially if you did a Western classical degree. Sometimes you have to just get through some of that stuff you learned in order to be an effective independent voice teacher. Not always, but sometimes. And not having a degree is not a barrier to being an effective voice teacher. But I think that we get caught up in this, like, I need to have this information, I need to have this validation from an institution in order to be a good voice teacher or in order to be accepted as a voice teacher. And that's just not, it's not true. It's just not true, right? So that is just not, it's just not true. Not a thing. Not a thing. So yes, so that's part of the reason that I wanted to develop the VoicePed UnDegree, where we're getting the information that we need. And part of the reason I'm talking about it now is because we're close to the end of the year, blah blah blah, all that stuff, and also it's coming up. 2022 is coming real fast. So we're getting the information that we need. I'm setting it up so that we get the information we need, but that the practicums are a huge part of what we do in the UnDegree. So that's part, like, all of those things, all of the things that you're telling me about your experience with an undergrad voice ped, or what you would hope to have in a voice ped degree. Those things are all being implemented into the VoicePed UnDegree. So having talked about VoicePed, learning, all of the things that, as we're trying to become better teachers and as we're working toward, serving our students better and all of that, as having talked about all of those things and having brought up all of the ideas of, what do you hope is in an UnDegree and all that stuff. Having talked about all of that, my one of my last sort of social media questions before we get to the holidays is this, and I would love for you to think about it. And if you have some answers and you would like to interact with that on social media, please feel free. It's going to be, I'll post that sometime either today or tomorrow. I can't remember. But the question is this, and something, please do deeply consider this. What are the things that you bring to the table as a voice teacher that are uniquely yours, that you could never learn in a voice ped degree or a voice ped class or from the Vocal Instrument 101 or from the voice ped UnDegree, that you could never learn, that is not taught because it's not learnable? It is uniquely yours. What do you bring to teaching that is not taught, that you could never have learned from a voice ped class or from a degree or from anything that I have done? What do you bring? Oh, Seth, ouch, ouch, ouch. Yeah. Seth says still figuring that out, right? So this is the reason that I'm asking this question, right? I want we can get so fixated on all of the things that I still need to do and all of the all of the all of the courses I can still take and I should take. We can get so fixated on all of the shoulds that we it gets lost, right? Oh yeah, Miriam says experience being an ASD mama, so an autism spectrum disorder mom, which has helped me to be a much better teacher. So true, so true. Yep, I think that's one of the things I bring as well. Ah, Tracy says delivery style. You can't learn that because you don't know the students you'll have. Yes, it's the co-neutron. The co-neutron. I don't know if that's a typo. If it's not a typo, I don't understand. You build to help them understand the techniques you're trying to get across. Yes, delivery style, that can be uniquely yours, right? And where does delivery style come from, right? It can come from your experience, but it can come from who you are. It can come from your belief system. It can come from how you interact with people in general. Tithe connection. Connection I get, Tracy. I don't know. Co-neutron. I don't know what I know. Oh, connection. Yes, it's the connection you build to help them understand the techniques. Yes, yes. Your communication and connection. I get you. I'm with you now. I don't know. The connection. Yeah. Typos, man. Autocorrect. So weird. But so that's what I hope you think about that and consider that. I am not going to do any more regular live office hours for the holidays. I'm going to have a couple of pop-ups in the next week. I'm going to have a couple of pop-ups, but I'm not going to do live office hours on like Christmas Eve. Just FYI, it's not going to happen. But I'll do a couple of pop-up lives. But the just something to consider in the next little while, like what is it that you bring that is uniquely yours that you could not learn in VoicePed, that no one can learn in VoicePed because no one can teach it, can't be taught, might be coached, maybe something that there may be things that could be coached a little bit or tweaked a little bit, but what are the things that are uniquely yours that can't be taught? Something to consider. Have a terrific weekend as we head into the holidays and into the holiday season. I hope that you have everything you need to thrive. And yes, there we go. I will see you on some pop-up live office hours next week. Just a couple. And then I'm going to do one more the following week. So it'll be my final 2021 live pop-up hour, live voice. What am I doing? Live office hours. Terrific. And like I said, if you do see the question, thanks, Valerie. Yes. And if you do see that question coming up on the socials and you are interested in kind of interacting and answering it on the socials, I would love to see your answers to that question. So terrific. Take good care. Let's end this video here. Boop. And